אנו מכריזים בזאת
I'm Barry Shaw, and this is The View from Israel. Holocaust Memorial Day is commemorated every year in Israel and in Jewish communities around the world. It seems, though, that the horrors of the Holocaust are receding in the past as we see statistics of rising hate crimes against Jews all around the world. And for that reason, I have my special guest, Emmanuel Run, as my guest on The View from Israel. Emmanuel, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me.
Right, Emmanuel is a film producer with more than 30 movies relating to the Holocaust to his name. Emmanuel, you were born in Jerusalem of German parents. Tell me something about your background.
My background, my parents came from Germany before the war, somewhat illegally, and settled in Jerusalem. They lost their families all over in Germany and Europe. And I grew up in Jerusalem. I went to school here. I went to the army here and worked for Israeli radio and was among those who started the Israeli television. And then 1972, I was sent to New York to send reports from the USA, from the UN to Jerusalem. And that's more or less the background.
So tell me something about your career in filmmaking and your emphasis on the Holocaust. What was the motivation to centering or dedicating your life to making movies, documentaries, and cinema movies about the Holocaust?
In Jerusalem, as a 7-year-old, my father took me to Martef HaShoah, the Holocaust cellar. It was the first Holocaust museum. I was 7 years old, and my father took me, and he showed me especially the soap made of human fat, and the lampshades made by Ilse Koch, made of human skins, living humans. And at the age of 15, I skipped school. I used to run away from school. And I attended the Eichmann trial, the Nazi criminal, the trial that took place in Jerusalem, 1961. And that was more or less the beginning of my interest in, with the Holocaust. Of course, we were not, as second generation, we were not allowed to ask our parents anything about their background because it was too painful. And
okay, tell me, among the films that you made, one of the most instrumental was a film called All Jews Out.
Right.
Tell me about this movie and what's the significance of its title, All Jews Out?
I came across a family called the Auerbachers in Queens, New York, and I took them 1988 for the 50 years to the pogrom night, so-called Kristallnacht, to their hometown, Göppingen by Stuttgart in Germany. And I started that film about what happened to the family. And when Inge was, Auerbacher was 4-year-old in 1933 or 1939. And I wanted to show what happened in that town during the Nazi time. I researched a lot and came across article of the local Nazi leader who claimed Jews have to be thrown out of our city, of our town. There are too many Jews here and Jews out. So that was the title from a film, All Jews Out. All Jews out, all Jews have to get out of our town.
Now, this movie, you took it to Los Angeles and to Hollywood. Tell us about that experience.
Well, my film, All Jews Out, I made 3 films with the family Auerbachers, and it was made in Germany because I wanted to educate the Germans as a first target audience. And when the films were finished, based on the fact that in that town I was able to get 12 high school children from that town to interview my eyewitnesses in the film, the Auerbachers and Rohrbachers and other Jews who came to town. But also I came across the German who was the head of the Nazi party at that town during the Holocaust, and he called the shots about everything. I was able to pull him to the panel to be interviewed. And I was filming the Auerbachers also in concentration camp Theresienstadt in Czechoslovakia. And yeah, so I made 3 films. And for the scene about the concentration camp, I came across a German woman who lived in Stuttgart, and she was part of the SS Nazi headquarters or commanders of that concentration camp. And she spoke in the film how terrible it was for the Jews without water, without enough water or food or sanitation, and with the fear that they will be deported every day to Auschwitz. And this lady, she was a good friend of the Nazi criminal Adolf Eichmann, who was in charge of deporting the Jews to the concentration camps. And so she was able to tell a lot. So based on the facts that in the film, there were not only Jews survivors, but also old Nazis who spoke about that time. And so my film was invited to be nominated to the Oscars. And since I made it in Germany, the German government put, it was made in German. And so the German government put on it English subtitles. And that's how I was invited to Los Angeles to follow the rules of the Academy Awards of nominating a film.
I understand that one of the viewings that you had of the movie, you were approached with by a particular lady who, tell us about the story, how your meeting with this lady and her impression of your movie led to the making of a film, The Schindlers List.
And obviously many survivors came to attend the screenings and they were crying. And after I screened the film and I answered questions, I stood by the door to the movie theater to greet the people who are coming out, many of them with red eyes. Some of them fell on my shoulders and crying and saying, "Thank you, Emmanuel, for making that film, because, you know, we as survivors, we cannot talk about it. And so we thank you for making it." I got the name of a lady, Leah Adler, and a lady from the Jewish Community Center drove me to her place. She ran a kosher, milky restaurant called Milky Way. And I came to see her and in her restaurant. And nice, petite, energetic lady who ran around the tables of her patrons and asking them how is the food and everything. And then we sat together and she told me her family came from Odessa 150 years earlier, and they didn't have any direct connection to Holocaust survivors' families. And then she said, she started to talk and she said, "Yeah, my son also makes films, Stevie this, Stevie that." And I told her, "Listen, I used to work in Hollywood making movies and I got to know many of the producers, directors, actors, and I don't remember any Steven Adler. And she said, no, my son's name is Steven Spielberg. And I almost fell off the chair when this petite lady told me that it's her son who is the genius who made so many great films. And then I told her, listen, Leah, we said in Yiddish, nachas, that when you get something good from your children, I told her, Leah, you have so much nachas from Stevie. Every place where he puts his fingers is gold. Excuse me. And but then I asked her, why didn't he make a Jewish film? I said it would be as successful as his other films. And so she told me, Emmanuel, I know that Stevie read books and scripts dealing with the Holocaust, but he never got to it. And then she poked me and she said, I'm meeting Stevie at 2:30 this afternoon, and I'm giving him an ultimatum. You have to make a Jewish film. And then, yeah, he made the Schindlers List. And well, when he got the Oscar in their hands, he thanked producer Lustig and other people. And then also he thanked his mother. He said, my charm for the film. And so I said, hallelujah, I made it. I made the shidduch. I made the connection.
It's incredible. Yes. You spoke before about your work in Germany on behalf of commemoration and memorizing of the Holocaust. Tell me about your experience with regard to the German chancellor at the time that helped change German policy related to the Holocaust.
Right. I lived in Munich in Germany when I made all those films, especially for the German people to learn everything about the Holocaust, about Jews, about German Jews, about Israel. And I once got a call from the Central Committee of Jews in Germany, and they told me that they know that I could serve also as a rabbi cantor for the Jewish communities who didn't have enough people to run services. And so I told the people, I cannot, because I work from Sunday till Friday making films, lecturing hundreds of times all over Germany, and I don't have the time. But they asked me, and they managed to get me to becoming a rabbi cantor altogether in 15 communities in Germany. Therefore, I was asked by the Christian-Jewish Relations Board in Germany to be part of them. There are 2 Protestants, 2 Catholics, and 2 Jews on the board, but they had only one. And so I became a member of that board, and therefore, sometimes twice, 3 times a week, I would be invited to events where the most important people, leaders of Germany in leadership, in government, in church, in education, were in those events. And after I came back from Israel and I made 6 films with young Germans I took to Israel to get to know us, the Jews and the Israelis, and to learn about the Holocaust, to hug survivors, go to Yad Vashem Memorial Place. I came back from Israel with 6 films and started to edit them. And in Israel, the young Germans were on 1994, on the Holocaust Memorial Day that is now coming here. In 1994, I filmed the group in Yad Vashem. They wanted to go there to see the memorial event to those who were killed in the Holocaust. And at the end of it, one of the young Germans, woman, approached me and I asked her in German if she would like to say something. I asked her, Karen, would you like to say something? Karen, willst du etwas sagen? And she said, and she started shouting, and how? And all the 300 survivors in the area paid attention to her shouting in German. I'm ashamed that in my country, in Germany, we don't remember where we are responsible for everything. We don't remember the Jewish victims the way you, the Jews, do. And that was the sign for me that I was waiting for a long time to get the German government to have a memorial day to the Holocaust, because they didn't have one. So when I came back to Germany and I was invited to those events, I met the people and I told them, I asked them, please, I have a request for you. I would like you to help me set up in Germany a memorial day to the Holocaust and to all the victims of the Nazis. Could you help me? So from the middle of 94 till the end of 95, I met about 250 of the VIPs, very important persons of Germany, whom some of them started to help me set it up and bring it to the president of Germany. And on the 3rd of January, 96, I got a call from his office that the German president is adopting my initiative, and he proclaims that January 27th, in that time 1996, to become the Memorial Day to the Holocaust and the victims of the Nazis. And I said, hallelujah, I made it.
And from there, the influence of your work reached the United Nations under the Secretary General at that time, Kofi Annan. Can you tell us something about that story?
Right. So from 1996, every January 27th, the Germans had a very impressive, important event at their parliament, the Bundestag, and I would be invited as a guest of honor to sit there. And they continued every year from 1996. And then European countries and other countries adopted my day, so to say, the January 27th, to their countries, a memorial day to the Holocaust. And they had in between thousands of events all those years. And then the Israeli ambassador to the UN, Benny, a friend of mine, 1996, after he has been to many of the events in Europe and in Germany and learned about the January 27th, he came to Kofi Annan, the General Secretary of the UN, and asked him to create an International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And that's what he did in 2005. It was the declaration that includes, I believe, up to 230 countries today who commemorate the Holocaust on the January 27th, because until then, in the world, only the Jews in Jewish communities in the world and in Israel commemorated the Holocaust in Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Memorial Day. And then I managed to get the International Holocaust Memorial Day, International Holocaust Remembrance Day taking effect.
Most of your films that you made are obviously documentaries, but tell me about the movie you made, Last Train to Auschwitz. This is not a documentary. You had actors there. It was made in Germany, I understand, with English subtitles. Tell me the theme and the essence of that movie. What was the storyline? What inspired you to make this particular movie, Last Train to Auschwitz?
Yeah, it's the last train to Auschwitz, the letzte Zug. It was made by a producer in Berlin, Atze Brauner, and he produced the film, and I was recruited to be a excuse me, to be a consultant on the film, and to the director, and to have a role playing in the film, and to coach the other actors with everything that deals with Jewish prayers or text in Hebrew or singing or whatever. So I had 4 roles in that film. and we shot the film in Prague in the studios. And the idea was that throughout the years, whenever Holocaust survivors were interviewed or told the story, it was usually more or less the same story, like we were at home or in the ghetto, and then the Nazis came and they took us to the freight train, and they took us for a few days, up to a week or about a week, to Auschwitz, and it was a terrible situation. And that film is depicting that situation where Jews are being crammed, like 100 Jews into one car, you know, like sardines, and without any water, any food, any sanitation facility, just taking them to Auschwitz. Many of the Jews died on that trip, especially the elderly or babies. They didn't have anything to eat, anything to drink. And the film depicted again that story that survivors tell. And one of the deportees in the film was the sister of my father from Berlin, Käthe Rund Rosenstein. And she was in Berlin in the resistance against the Nazis by the Gad Beck group or the Baum group, fighting the Nazis in Berlin in the underground resistance. And she was also with the non-Jewish resistance groups. And in March of 1943, Himmler promised Hitler that for Hitler's birthday on April 20th, 1943, Berlin would be Judenrein, meaning no more Jews in Berlin. So the Gestapo made extra efforts, and they used to pay people to locate hiding Jews. And they found about 623 Jews, and they in Berlin, and they deported them from the 17th platform of the train station in Berlin to Auschwitz. And again, it was, we filmed them and how people are dying and how they're crying for water and they don't get it. I played the Orthodox Jew who every morning prays with talis and tefillin and praying the morning prayers. And every day I was praying the prayer that belongs to that day. For each day in the week, we have a special prayer. So when people know those prayers, they would know what day of the week the sins are taking place. And so, yeah, that was the film, The Last Train. Everybody can see it online if they Google The Last Train. And it's about 2 hours with actors. It was German actors, Czech actors, Slovakian actors, and as I said, we filmed it in Prague. And since then, people who hear survivors tell the stories, they can see the scenes in the film.
You know, Emmanuel, it seems to me that despite the incredible work done by people like you, the Simon Wiesenthal Center and other organizations, it seems that the anti-Semites are recovering from their shame and guilt and raising their ugly heads more and more. Even if we take America, the greatest number of hate crimes in New York and other places are those committed against Jews. This despite your work, what needs to be done today in order to combat the rising anti-Semitism that affects both local Jews and Israel, the collective Jews, and calling Israel the Jewish state, Nazi, etc., committing genocides, which is all a total lie. What needs to be done these days to correct this misconception that is rising and not being challenged sufficiently?
Well, thank you. I can say what I'm involved with, connected with elected officials in the United States from the Senate and Congress and local governments in the States, in America, and trying to fight back, so to say, to battle those anti-Semites and to educate them. Also tell them the biblical phrase that if people hurt you, they'll get hurt. And also that whenever the Jews were hurt throughout the history, then it came out also to the non-Jews who were punished or got hurt as well. And so I'm working with people about the issues like the CRT and the critical race theory, that many people are changing in America, changing the culture. It used to be America was built on the Judeo-Christian culture, and now many people are taking it away and changing it. So as I said, I'm working with many, many groups, also many Christians who are friends of Jews in Israel, and to combat that problematic of anti-Semitism. I do also some of the work in Germany, similar, but America is bigger and more necessary because many Jews live there and they live in fear, not knowing what to do and what things would bring. And because the Jewish DNA tells people that every 50 years or 100 or 200 years in the Jewish history, there was a pogrom or massacre or Holocaust at the end. And I tell the people they have to be aware that hopefully they would live in America in peace forever, but nobody knows what can happen, what revolutions. And we see the more and more attacks on synagogues and killing Jews and beating them up on the sidewalks of the streets of America. And so, yeah, as I said, I'm in touch with those elected officials, sometimes when I'm in Israel, so I can meet them here. And that's what has to be done, campaigning. I used to run television. As I said, I produced 240 films and television shows. One of the TV shows I produced in America was A Look at Israel. And in that, and I used to show news, and I also used to interview leaders, American leaders, about those topics of keeping the Jewish tradition and culture and religion alive. And of course, I'm very active with keeping the memory of the Holocaust alive, lecturing in America nowadays much with Zoom. And I lecture in Hebrew, English, and German, also to Germany and Switzerland, about the Holocaust, and that we don't want to see a second Holocaust, God forbid, in the world, in America or in Israel, that is being threatened all the time.
Emmanuel, it seems to me from the work that I do that the campuses in America, maybe some other places as well, are very dangerous places for Jewish students or even Israelis who want to talk there. What has been your experience on going onto campuses? Because it's the young, impressionable minds that we need to get to. What experience have you had, good or negative, when you've been invited onto campuses in America or other countries?
Yes, when I was in New York, I went to Columbia University. By the way, I used to teach films back then at New York University, at Columbia University, and at the School of Visual Arts. And so I knew people over there. And in New York, some years ago, I went to, let's say, Columbia University in New York, Upper West Side, and many Jewish students complained that they are being attacked. They are being also harassed by their own professors if they side with Israel or show that they are Jews. And I went also to New York University, and then I lived for a while in Philadelphia. So I went to UPenn and other universities, and on campus meeting the students and hearing the terrible stories that they tell. That young Jewish woman student used to have a Star of David hanging here, and she took it off because she would be attacked. And if she had a mezuzah on the door that shows that it's a Jewish apartment, she removed it because many times these anti-Semites would attack Jews in those rooms, in those dormitories. And so I gave them also, I taught them if they come to any discussion, what they should say to try to win, so to say, the battle. And this is something I've done since the 70s, dealing with anti-Semitism and the Holocaust and teaching and lecturing all over the place about it.
Yes, I think the time has come, I think, to adopt even a legal approach to what's going on campuses, because anti-Semitism on campuses has become a breeding ground. Tell me, how do people, if any organizations or audiences would like to invite you to talk or have a screening, how do people contact you?
Well, if you could put in that interview my email address or even my phone number, they could send me WhatsApp or call me or send me an email. And I do it all the time. I do it in Israel. I lecture a lot, especially now towards the Memorial Day to the Holocaust. I lecture through Zikaron Basalon organization to many, many different variety of groups. But also I lecture a lot on a daily basis via Zoom all over the world. So if people will contact me, I'll be glad to lecture to them or screen my films or whatever.
Well, we'll certainly put your contact info, maybe website on screen so people can contact you. I think it's increasingly important that they hear your voice and really understand what the arguments are, because the arguments against anti-Semitism, Jew hatred in any form are vitally important today, where the anti-Semitism is increasingly alive and killing.
And some people will talk about my work after I pass away at some point until 120. And so again, Barry, I thank you very much, first of all, for everything that you do to keep the memory alive and keep the safety of Jews and Israel in the world. Every day you have another article or interview. And so thank you very much. And I hope people will watch your show on a daily basis. And again, thank you. And let's have a happy and Passover. We'll have in 2 days the Passover that we celebrate how we left slavery in Egypt 3,000 years ago. And since then, we keep the same tradition, and we learn reading the Haggadah that every generation there are people in the world who want to annihilate us, and we have to remember it and to do everything possible, as you do, and I do, and others do, to make sure it does not happen, and that we can live healthy and happy like everybody else in the world.
Yes, indeed. I think, but your mention of a prediction that we take in Passover, which precedes the Holocaust Memorial Day, that in every generation there arises an enemy that wants to annihilate you. I just want to tell you that my studies, my research in the persecution of Jews through the ages, it seems to be a repeated pattern. We saw it certainly in the Holocaust. We saw it, as you mentioned, Emmanuel, happened in Spain and Portugal. It happened in Russia as well. Wherever you Jews rise up in society and feel they are assimilated in a certain society, that society inevitably turns against the Jews. It has happened, as you mentioned, not only with the Nazis, but also with the Spanish and Portuguese Jews. It has happened in Russia. It seems to be happening in other places, even so-called democratic countries. We see it in the Middle East because Israel takes in the remnants of the survivors. In other words, Israel represents the spirit of Holocaust and persecution survivors. And this is a driving spirit in Israel right now. And often it is misinterpreted as something else. Viewers, I hope you took note of this this video. Please click like if you liked it, if that's the right word. Please subscribe to other versions of The View from Israel. And if you get yourself a copy, maybe we'll put a link here. Please watch Emmanuel Rund's movie, Last Train to Auschwitz. This is Barry Shaw saying thank you, shalom, have a happy Pesach, and please bow your head when we come to the Holocaust Memorial Day in memory of those who didn't make it today.
Thank you, Barry. Shkoyach.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for being on the show.
אנו מכריזים בזאת